I'm usually pretty good with the rules. And Battletech is an interesting beast in terms of wargaming in that you can play the core rules. There's the rules in the starter set. You've got the core rules, Game of Armored Combat. And then you have Total Warfare, where you bring in lots of different elements, combined arms, infantry, tanks. You have rules for building. You have artillery. You have naval units. You have air support. You can even take your battle out into space. So there's this idea of multiple layers that you can explore as a wargamer, as a mech warrior. And the rules they're a little bit all over the place. And there's some obscure rules that you want to do something. You want to drop that infantry out of your Karnov onto a mech. Well, there's a couple of lines that show you how to potentially do that. So here's the question. I was asked this question. I kind of looked through the rules, and I looked through some notes, just some tactics and some pictures, and tried to really think back in my mind. Has this ever happened? Either as a deliberate tactica or just the fog of war, right? That fog of war where just weird stuff happens in Battletech. If you're playing on a hex map, and we're going to say hex map, if you're playing on a hex map, can you force your opponent off the map? And if they leave the map, what happens? Now, there is a rule for forced withdrawal. This idea, mech warriors, right? Knights of the realm. If your mech takes internal damage in the torso and critical systems are potentially damaged, you will begin to back off the table. You will begin to make your way to your deployment zone or whatever the nearest table edge is. And that represents that as much as I, most of the time, play duel to the death and let's fight to the bitter end, most mech warriors will withdraw. Most forces will look to preserve the mechs rather than take the field at all costs. I mean, I've been playing too much Warhammer 40K with my Space Marines. Bolt, pistol, and chainsword take that hill regardless of the cost. Although one could say maybe that's more Imperial Guard-like. So there are times where you will move off the table, and then that unit, that mech, will be out of the game. And with vehicles, they get abandoned, depending on the situation. But if you're not playing that, voluntarily or indirectly, can you leave the table? What happens? Can you force someone off the table, and then regardless, are they still in play or out of play? Do they stop at the edge of the table? Your thoughts. And the two places this might happen, I mean, Tactica-wise, it was an interesting post developing a skimmer that was really, really fast, heavily armored, and its only job was to basically impact into mechs. So there are times where there are physical attacks. You can charge and push and shove and move, so maybe you do that on the very end. Or, again, the fog of war, maybe something weird happens, like you got your longbow on that last hex because you want maximum range. It takes some damage, it falls over, you see what hex it falls into, and it falls into one of the 3 hexes behind it. Is it magically propped up by an invisible barrier? Or does it fall off the table? So I know some of you out there have like Total Warfare memorized. Where is it in Total Warfare? Because it is a very good question, and it could possibly come up, and I'm sure it's happened at some point.